At 6:30, we'll call this meeting to order, and I'll ask clerk to call the roll.
Mayor Jackson is absent. Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Bowen,
Here.
Ms. Corrigan.
Here.
Mr. Lopez,
Here.
Mr. Lucero. Is absent, sorry. Ms. Parker, she is here.
Here.
Yes, we have one.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, ma'am.
You forgot my name, Mayor.
Mr. Robinson is here.
But I marked him. I didn't say his name. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's all right.
Mr. Robinson.
I'm here, Joanne.
Okay, if you'd all please stand. Veronica's going to lead us in the invocation, and Chad will lead us in the pledges.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we come to you today to thank you for all that you do for our community, for all the blessings that you bestow upon us, and for the citizens that truly care for our community and the betterment of our community. Guide and protect our meeting tonight and help us in all that we do. We would also like to pray that you bestow rain upon our community. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico as the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to our scheduled business, and our first item is minutes of the previous meeting held July 5th, 2022. Received your packets with the minutes. If there are no additions, deletions, or corrections, I'll take a motion for approval.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we accept the minutes as submitted. Second.
Motion by Mr. Robinson, second by Mr. Lopez. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item B, presentation of 20-year service award to Marilyn Rapp, Finance Director and Treasurer. Rapp, will you please come forward? Got a couple of things here for you, Marilyn. I'll try to make it brief.
Yes, sir.
That's a little joke between Marilyn and I.
Yes.
Let me come down. First of all, Marilyn would like to present you with this plaque. 20-year service award presented to Marilyn Rapp by the mayor, council, and administration of the city of Portales. We sincerely appreciate your faithful service for 20 years, July 2002 to July 2020. It may sound like a long time to you, but it doesn't seem like it's been that long for us.
That's not to me either.
All right, now we got one more. All right, one more. Get over here. So we have a letter. And it reads, Dear Marilyn, in recognition of faithful service you have rendered, the city of Portales is pleased to present you with your 20-year service pin. The skill, knowledge, and judgment that comes from many years of experience is invaluable, as well as being a testimony of devotion to duty. On behalf of the city of Portales, its administration, and your fellow employees, we are pleased to present this award to you and congratulate you on your accomplishments.
Thank you.
Would like to make some comments.
No comments at all. Keep it brief, as in I've enjoyed it, and here's some more years.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay. Again, thank you, Marilyn. Next is recognition of Jenna Richards, HR Director, as Employee of the Month of June. Ms. Austin.
So I got an email that states Jenna, all caps, exclamation marks. My goodness, I do not know how I would function without Jenna. She is always willing to put aside what she is working on and listen to the questions, concerns, or even hilarious story I have to say. She is always willing to help. Each time I bring something to her, she is always saying, you got this. But let me know if I can help in any way. It is nice to have someone that is willing to take time out of their very busy day and not make it seem like it is a burden to do so. She listens to employees and really makes them feel like they are heard and that her office is open to them. I cannot say enough amazing things about Jenna. She did bring your child to work day and did all the planning for it. She went above and beyond for the children and allowed the parents to share these experiences with their children that wouldn't have been able to do before. I called her with 3 kids that day and she fit them in and not being negative about it, even though it was the day of. She just smiled and said, we can make this work, of course. I also want to touch base with her that her job is hard and she's dealing with all of us. And even though she has to have a tough talk or doesn't like something someone is saying or doing, she informs them in such a way that everyone leaves with their dignity in place. And that is not an easy task to do. Jenna stepped into the role of human resource director with such ease and grace. There was no adjustment period where we were left in limbo as she figured out her job. This small paragraph doesn't do her justice of how great she is for the city and its employees. From Jennifer Contreras.
Thank you for all. You're very welcome. Kathy, I believe you have some.
So we'll be filling in.
Okay.
This is new to me, so forgive me. I'm playing catch up, but members of the council, thank y'all for allowing me to speak on behalf of Chief Kathy, who's out of town tonight. First, we have some personnel that we would like to recognize to receive their challenge coins this month. We would like to recognize firefighters Andrew Gramzo, Zant Zamora. I believe Zant is unable to make it tonight, as well as Tyler Watson. Do you want us to go up front? Okay. Let me take this.
Thank you. Good job, guys.
For you guys in the audience, I've served on the council for many, many years, and this may be one of the longest agendas I've seen, and I don't know how long, and some of the items are going to be time consuming, but I appreciate brevity from all of our presenters. But in our next item, discussion item, Roosevelt County offered regarding dispatch and JPA for the same, Commissioner Savage. Please.
Pro Tem Miller. This is Austin, members of the council. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. This time I feel somewhat like the mosquito in the nudist colony. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know really where to begin. But I'd like to begin probably by addressing some of the issues on y'all's return to our offer. First of all, I'd like to talk about the figure of $175,000. That $175,000 in your reply said you consider it to be a fair offer, even though it's less than what you asked for. And we realize that. At the same time, as a negotiator and as I looked at the figures, it's quite a bit more than I personally thought you deserved. But my fellow commissioners thought that they would offer $175,000 as an incentive to maybe get you to transition to a regional dispatch center, just as an incentive. And there's a shared concern among my fellow commissioners that the allocation of $175,000 to the city without a seat at the table. Or having any say as to how that money is spent is, that's not to their liking. But they did it as a means of providing incentive to transition to a regional. And with that being said, also with $175, we were kind of expecting to have a seat. Along with that should come some ability for us to voice an opinion. But we're willing to give up that voice to a governing board. We're ready to relinquish our authority in governing to a governing board. But really, we're not really interested in just not having any say at all. So I wanted to talk about that 175,000. Then I want to talk some about the regional dispatch. A regional dispatch center meets the demands of a consolidated PSAP described by the Department of Finance Bureau Chief Stephen Weinkauf, and brings us closer to their 5-year plan to convert New Mexico PSAPs to regional operations. Mr. Weinkauf said, just a little bit far away, Mr. Weinkauf said, while the commissioners met with him at the courthouse and also here at the council chambers, that the most efficient dispatch centers are those that are not under the governance of a chief of police or the county sheriff and are supervised by a governing board. Mr. Weinkauf clearly advised a multiple agency entity created by a JPA with the oversight of a governing board. So following the counsel of Mr. Weinkauf, it seems clear that the state is moving towards regional dispatch centers, and I think that we'd probably be ahead of the curve if we started our progressing that way now. Secondly, a regional dispatch center relieves both the county manager and the city manager of any oversight authority concerning dispatch, as this authority will be delegated specifically and solely to the governing board. Number 3, dispatch will be managed by an at-will employee responsible only to the governing board. The county commission and the city council will determine the makeup of the board through the development of the JPA. Past this, neither the commission nor the council have any management authority. It is totally up to the governing board how they supervise the dispatch manager. Number 4, regional dispatch center relieves the chief of the police of dispatch management, allowing him time to devote more energy and resources to other responsibilities. I was reminded by visiting with several of the county law enforcement personnel that prior to us hiring a detention manager, I was told that the Roosevelt County law enforcement spent about 45% of their time on the detention center, leaving only about 55% of their time to devote to the constituents that elected them. And the time that decision was made, they were very much in favor of going to a detention center managed with a manager. And it's worked out well for them, according to the conversations that I've had. So I think that in this instance, it could also work well for the city and the county. Since the positions on the governing board are composed of already known officials, it should be an easy task to establish the board. The proposed JPA calls for a county sheriff or his appointed designee, chief of police or his appointed designee, the Portales Fire and EMS chief or his appointed designee, the EMU police chief or his appointed designee, and an elected representative of the volunteer fire departments or his designee. So since we already know basically who these people are, it should be easily within a matter of a days, perhaps at the week at most, to establish this board. This board then, this governing board, will provide for equal opportunity oversight and a fair way to share the costs based upon calls for service and board oversight. Number 6. If the time required for transition to a regional dispatch requires longer than that suggested in our proposal, the county is willing to extend the time frame in order to achieve the transition. Instead of a 5 months that we can offer to extend this as much as a year. Because in the proposal, we said, we'd like to do this, revisit it in a year. So if we can go to this governing board, we suggest we can put this board into action in 5 months by the end of the year. If we can't do that, surely in a year's time, in a year's time, we can go ahead and revisit it. Because of the sharing of the costs and the way we're dispersing the funds in a year, we can revisit and tweak this proposal, renegotiate the joint powers agreement. Relocation of the dispatch center and equipment is not being called for in this proposal. It can stay where it is. It needs to be, if it needs to be relocated in the future, it will be the decision of the governing board. Okay. So we're not proposing to change where it's housed, change where the equipment is. You'll leave it there, turn the management over to a dispatch manager under the jurisdiction of the governing board. And we don't have to relocate. It will be up to that board if they want to relocate. Number 8, a regional dispatch center is one entity doing one job, and there will be no duplication of services. Okay. So hopefully that might have explained some of the comments made in your return to proposal. The issue of time. I felt that reading your counter proposal said inefficient time. We feel that inefficient time is not a legitimate reason to not accept. We suggested 5 months should be ample time. Surely a year will be an ample time. So we don't think that time is a legitimate concern. If time is a legitimate concern concerning, well, we've got to get our budget in. Well, a budget is a living document, subject to change, subject to edit, subject to amendment. So I don't see, even if you throw into consideration, we've got to get this done in order to meet the deadlines of the budget. I think that budget is still subject to amendment. So I think that using the time as a reason not to accept this, I can't see the logic behind that personally. Duplication of resources, duplication of services. We've already said that regional dispatch will be a lone entity. It will be supervised by an independent governing board, providing one service, and those services will not be duplicated. So duplication of services, again, we don't feel is a legitimate concern for the city. So another thing that I read, and I think it makes a lot of sense, was the fact that the city said, we've been providing this service, we've been doing a good job, and there's no need to change it. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. If something's worked, don't fix it. Okay. The flip side of that coin would be then, no matter how good your job you think you're doing, there's always room for improvement. So in this instance, in my mind, the improvement comes in turning your police chief loose to pursue other responsibilities. Okay. I think it will allow for more equal distribution of the costs with each partner paying their fair share. And if you have a governing board that is patrolling that, I think that if we need, we're thinking about the cost being shared according to the volume or percentage of cost for service. But if the board thinks that that's insufficient, then that board can change it. I think this is an opportunity for improved personal relationships through equal opportunity oversight of this board, because all cooperating entities have a seat at the table. And all cooperating entities have the responsibility of working to ensure that this is a success. So I think it offers the opportunity for people to work together, the city council, the county commission, fire, EMS, ENMU, everyone to get together, work collectively on a project that we can improve our personal relationships. I have noticed there's another issue that I'm reluctant to bring up, but I think we probably should, and this will be the last thing I have to say. The issue that we're willing to give you 3 more seats at the table, plus Johnny Montiel on this public safety committee. I know nothing about a public safety committee. I'm not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with what it does, what its function is. So in order to try to educate myself, I began to look down through your agendas, your minutes, to see if there are any proposals, any time that this committee has rose and reported and made recommendations to the city, to the council. I'm sure they're probably there. I couldn't find them. I did find one instance where the city council did reappoint that committee. They kept 2 old members, appointed 2 new to it. But I couldn't find any instance where that committee had done any work for the council. So I question the value of having a seat on a committee that doesn't meet, doesn't report. I'm having a hard time seeing the value of that offer. I'm sure it would if the council, and most committees that I'm familiar with, this would be a standing committee, a committee that comes into being and serves with the duration of a particular set of officers. And when that particular set of officers moves on, we reestablish that standing committee. It's a standing committee that is made so that when a problem arises that is germane to that committee, the city council or the parent entity can refer to that committee, delegate to that committee the responsibility of researching the issue and coming back with recommendations. Or you can give them full power to act. But the parent organization has to delegate that responsibility to the committee. I have seen no evidence of that happening in the minutes and the agendas of previous meetings. And so I question whether that would be a valuable offer to the commission. I'm sure that those of you who work with the Public Safety Committee have found it very useful. I haven't seen evidence of that. So I just wanted to address that issue right quick. Other than that, to recap the issue of the city saying we can't accept this offer because of the time. I don't think time is an issue. We're willing to extend that to maybe as much as a year, and we can revisit it then. We can't accept it because it is a duplication of services. Whereas the regional dispatch will be one entity, there will be no duplication of services. And this also offers the opportunity of freeing up your county, your city manager, your police chief to concentrate on other tasks. And I think it can improve relations between the council, the commission, and other entities within the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe we're going to debate this at all, Commissioner, but you know, you made some points that I would like to make a counterpoint or two about. You and I were appointed by our particular entities to negotiate this JPA and further, and our original offer was made in April. We received your counter offer, I think about a week ago today. And we were given till the end of the week, Friday, by 5 o'clock in your letter to make a response. We made that response. I believe if we would have had your letter in May or even June, we would have had a lot of time to sit and discuss this and probably find a lot of common ground. And you know, I just want to point that out, that you had our proposal. You could have made, hopefully you could have made this counter proposal a month and a half ago, and we could have had this discussion amongst us as the negotiators on behalf of our entities and probably came up to something that would have been a little bit more timely. But thank you for your response and your offer today, and we will get back with you in short notice. Thank you. Okay, our next item is request for council direction relating to amending ordinance number 689, an ordinance providing for the annexation of the Ravenwood Estates addition and a zone change to the city of Portales. Mr. Dorr, I think I'll let you take this.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the issue that came before the council at the previous meeting was, I believe, request for a variance. And what you're talking about is if you're going to go in and change the statutory language or the language in the ordinance, you're going to have an amendment to the ordinance, which hasn't been set up. It hasn't been changed. There's some other issues that may come up that may prevent this from occurring. But as far as action tonight, once again, you cannot take action on a variance change when the change that you are actually making is a change to the language in the ordinance itself. So I believe it needs to come back. If you want to put it back on the agenda, it needs to come back as a request for an ordinance change or modification of the ordinance as written. And that needs to go to the planning commission, and then it needs to be brought back to the council for that specific matter.
So I think then, because what you're asking here is direction. And if what you're saying, and from what I'm understanding, the way this subdivision was put together, it was put together under a special part of our zoning ordinance and of our subdivision ordinance called a
Planned
planning
unit.
unit.
Unit development.
Yeah, planning unit development. So, and I understand to accomplish that, in that part of the ordinance, which I looked at, it does require that it goes back to the planning commission. So if there's no disagreement so that we can move forward, that we'd send this back to the planning commission for recommendation on how we handle this particular
I just got
situation.
one thing, Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure.
The
Chad's on the planning commission.
planning and zoning committee meets in August 22nd. Is that enough time to put that on that agenda?
We have till July 4th to get our public notices out. Sorry, August 4th. So we still have time to add extra items. to it.
So recommendation from the council would be, that would be our soonest we could see it in planning and zoning would be August 22nd.
It's the fourth Monday of every month.
So that would be the recommendation. Yeah, thank you.
So that's where it needs to go under our current ordinance, the way it was developed under the plan development zoning section. It needs to go back to planning commission. I believe there are some options that they can do another plan development under that. But it changes the entire ordinance and changes basically the basics of the subdivision as it is today. So is there any objection to moving forward and sending it back to the planning commission? Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, do we need a motion to do that?
No, it just said that they wanted direction and there's no action required. So the direction we're giving is sending it back to planning commission. Okay? That brings us to, no, ma'am. I'm sorry, we don't have any public comment at this time. There's a place at the end of the agenda for public comment, okay? That brings us to item G, which there are several items. The first item is ratification of expense approval report monthly bills for June 2022. And Marilyn, you will have the floor now for a little bit.
Yes, sir. I will try to make this as brief as possible. In your packet, you have the monthly bills for the month of June. And in the month of June, the city spent $1,463,116.30. It's a little bit more than we have been spending. But, you know, a lot of that is trying to get stuff in at the end of the year. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I await your pleasure.
Was the recommendation of the finance committee to approve this item.
Yes.
So are there any questions?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Heflin,
Motion to approve, sorry. Second.
second by Mr. Bone. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thanks, Diane. Next item under this is resolution 22-2302, approving the 109th fiscal year final quarterly report for year ending June 30, 2022. This item was also brought to the finance committee last week. Marilyn?
Yes, sir. And and a report was handed out at your places, and this has the recap from the LGBMS, that is the state site, and it has a summary of the detail in the back. If you have any questions about this, I would be happy to answer those, but the finance committee did recommend this to the council for approval. And it's really something that is required from DFA for our final budget, just because other entities perhaps didn't get the reports in timely or correctly.
Now, we see each quarterly report here, but the state requires us to adopt a resolution approving the final one. So again, Finance Committee recommended approval of this particular resolution. And if there are no further questions, I will take a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Robinson, second by Ms. Cordova. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bowman,
Yes.
Ms. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Heflin.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes. Item 3 under item G is resolution 22-2303, approving the 109th fiscal year final budget adjustments for FY 21-22. In your packet, this is what it looks like. Ms. Rapp.
And the finance committee did meet also on Friday to look at this, and they did recommend approval. And it looks like there's quite a bit, but this is for end of year cleanup. I just like to make things look a little bit cleaner when we submit it to the state. If there's any individual items we can talk about, but it's all pretty standard, just moving things around in expenses and making things match what actually happened. Otherwise, I await your pleasure.
Questions for Ms. Rapp? On these, we see these about once every quarter also. Kind of see how they work. Give you a minute to look at it. And if there are no questions, I'll take a motion for approval of resolution 22-2304.
I'll recommend to approve resolution 22-2304 as a motion.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Heflin,
Excuse me,
second by
I-
Mr. Robinson.
Isn't this 22-2303?
I'm sorry, you're right. I was ahead of myself. So it's resolution 22-2303.
All right, I'll redirect that motion then. Motion to approve resolution 22-2303.
Mr. Robinson,
109.
okay. Motion by Mr. Heflin, second by Mr. Robinson. If there's no further questions, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Cordova,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mr. Sorry, Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Heflin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're to resolution 22-2304. Governing body fixed assets for year ending June 30th, 2022. And that would be this particular piece. It's wrap.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. And this is another relatively new requirement. And if you might remember, a couple of years ago, we did get a finding because we didn't get this certification done. And what we need to do is certify the fixed assets on our inventory. The adjusted cost total is $84,627,297. Our cumulative depreciation is $41,472,388. And so the net asset value is $43,154,908. And our fixed assets are assets that have a useful life of over 2 years and a value of over 5,000.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Rapp on fixed assets? Once again, this item was brought before the Finance Committee on Friday and is unanimous to recommend approval of this resolution. So questions for Ms. Rapp on assets?
Ms. Rupp, you said 2 years in length and
Greater 2 years or more in useful life and a value over $5,000.
thank you. I move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Cordova.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Cordova, second by Mr. Lopez. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes. Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Cordova, Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Heflin.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that is approved. I think this is the final resolution I have to keep straight today. Final budget presentation for fiscal year 2022-23 and resolution 22-2305, adopting the final 110th fiscal year budget.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I did not bring a new presentation to you because this budget is exactly the same as what was presented in interim. The only thing that has changed is our beginning cash balances. And you do have a copy of the recap with the updated cash balances. And on the back of that is last year's final budget recap for comparison. If you have any questions about any individual funds or anything, I would be happy to answer those. Otherwise, I await your pleasure.
Once again, this was approved unanimously at Finance Committee on Friday because we approved it in May on our preliminary budget. But are there any questions from those of you that were not at Finance? There are no questions. I'll take a motion for approval of resolution 22-2305. Ms. Parker, thank you.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Parker, second by Mr. Heflin. Joanne, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Cordova,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Heflin.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 6 under item G is approval of the credit card acceptance and processing policy. Ms. Rapp.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And this is in City Manager Sarah Austin might jump in because she did put this policy together. This is a new requirement from DFA. that we adopt a policy for accepting credit cards. And it's basically talks about how that we need to keep the information secure and how we need to process and take care of the information. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Otherwise, the finance committee did approve or recommend approval of this to the council.
Ms. Austin, you have any additional comments?
No.
Okay. Ms. Cordova, you had some good information on this. Do you have any additional comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? If not, what's the pleasure of approving this policy of acceptance and processing of credit cards?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Heflin, second by Mr. Lopez. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Last item under item G is approval of the city's facility upgrade. Are you going to do this or is Miss Austin?
Miss Austin. will.
I had them print out another pie chart, because we know Chad likes the pie chart. This is, we would like to request to use the American Recovery Funds, FRF, FLSRF funds. They're constantly changing it to purchase a new city hall with minimum repairs. And then the other half of that, we would like to use for street equipment, mechanic shop improvements, wastewater plant improvements. And then we want to do some upgrades with the DFA to recapture their water to use it at in our reclamation pond and in our purple fire hydrants.
Would you like to go over the chart real quick? Because some of this is not real easy to read.
Okay, so.
Or maybe Mr. Heflin can since he really likes them, but
I
I
think I'll,
actually had it written down.
yeah, I did too on my
yeah.
finance deal.
So we have
But-
2.4 million funds from the American Recovery Funds. And it'll take about 1.4 to buy the building and the two properties adjacent to it and do the minimal upgrades, which would be to repair a window in the front for a water window in the gas company. We'd like to use about 300,000 for the mechanic shop. The wastewater plant and DFA will be about 150,000 each. And the remainder will be for the use of street equipment that we can put back on our streets, which could be anything from a street sweeper to a chip sealer, anything that we deem necessary. And that's something we would go back before council to decide what is needed.
So the second largest portion would be used for purchase of street equipment to get that program back up and
Yes.
running, correct?
Yes, that is the goal.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on this facility upgrade using the
FRF funds.
FRF
American
funds?
Recovery Funds.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mr. Mayor.
What is it, this one?
I don't know if this is appropriate time to ask this question, but when you say replacing street equipment, can you give us an inventory of what we have and what we're going to replace?
We can, and we would like to come before a committee to do so. We'd like to bring with you what we have, what we need to replace, and then have you decide on what you would like replaced.
Not right now.
No, right now. Okay,
We did ask a couple of those questions in finance committee, like
okay.
Yeah.
the oil distributor, the chip spreader, their conditions.
So that's forthcoming.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd just like to state that the only difference between the streets and the new facility was only a difference of 400,000. So it's not a significant amount.
A lot going into the purchase of street equipment. Any other questions regarding this item? If not, I take a motion.
I so move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Motion by Mr. Robinson, second by Mr. Lopez for approval.
Bowen.
Mr. Bowen.
Mr.
Daniel.
Bowen, I'm sorry. My apologies. Okay, now that we've corrected that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Now move to item H. Item H is recommendations from the Public Works Committee. The first item is consideration of recommendation by the Public Works Committee approving a manufacturing and industrial resource service permit for New Mexico Green Door LLC for cannabis production within the city limits of Portales, an application by Nathan Dodge. Mr. Deshay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Team Council. Nathan Dodge made an application with the Public Works Committee for a resource permit. This is part of his cannabis permit. And this falls in line with our industrial permits that we've written in the past. If you can see, we've got our draft permit to begin. And then the actual application that he made is behind it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Dodge, are you just gonna be growing or selling in this facility?
This one here is just a grow. There's 2 different locations. This is just for the micro business. It's just for the grow on 839.5. The other one on 815 will be a dispensary retail.
I had another question as well. So I looked up on the New Mexico Cannabis Division,
Yes, sir.
and you can look up on anybody trying to open up a business in Portales, retail, sales, whatever. I don't see New Mexico Green Door on there for a state license.
I was waiting on the approval for the water rights. Everything has been submitted. It's pending right
Okay.
now. They said it hasn't been public until I get the water rights.
Okay.
Send in for it.
Okay.
So it is under, I mean, I do have the reference number and everything for the state. It's just they haven't put anything, so I'm just waiting on water rights. I did a micro business, so we could apply for 2 licenses at one time. And now it's kind of holding us up for the retail.
Okay.
On the growth side.
Okay, thank you.
And I would just like to state that we did ask that question, Public Works as well, and they have to go through this process prior to getting that.
Okay.
They haven't started running concurrently together. It's really kind of a mess.
Yeah, I figured, I just was curious.
Okay, any other questions regarding this first item? Ms. Cordova, was the recommendation of the Public Works Committee for approval?
Correct, 2 to 1.
I would like to ask, our public works, where'd you get some of what was charged for the water?
The standard rate will apply. If you're talking about the exceedances, that is, the city manager asked me to come up with something along the lines of a punitive rate structure, and that's what that is. So the 4,000 gallons that he's allocated will follow our standard industrial rate. I don't have that rate in front of me. I want to say it's like $3.42 a thousand, but I don't have that in front of me.
I didn't read that $3 and some cents a thousand. I read it like $250 a thousand.
What you read, Mr. Lopez, was if they exceed the amount allotted. So in the first tier, if they exceed the amount allotted, that is $250 per thousand. If they, for the first 3,000, then after that, it goes up for 4,000 and 5,000 over is 500 per thousand. And then above that, it goes at 6,000 and up it goes to $1,000 per thousand. But that is over their base allocation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's a pleasure of the council regarding recommendation of service permit for Green Door LLC, New Mexico. Mr. Lopez, you made that?
Yes.
Okay. Second by Mr. Robinson. Any further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next item is consideration of the recommendation by the Public Works Committee approving a manufacturing industrial resources service permit for Lucky Keystone RD LLC for cannabis production within the city limits of Portales. Applicant is Tyson Lewis. Mr. Deshay.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Council. This is the second application that we had. This is not for a micro business. It was brought before the Public Works Committee for the recommendation. The recommendation was to approve with a change, reducing his requested allocation from 15,000 gallons to 9,000 gallons.
Okay, following the same rate structure that we talked about
Yes,
in the previous one.
yes.
Okay.
The rates that you see there, like I explained to Councilman Lopez, is if they exceed the base rate that they're allowed, then that's when that punitive rate structure comes in.
Further questions? Ms. Cordova?
I just like to state that for he is doing some, he is going to do some reuse, so he's gonna have some of his reuse water. So he shouldn't go above that. The reasoning that we went down to the $9,000, if I can remember correctly, is That's the high usage for a residential area. And being that we are on water restrictions and low in water, that is why we decided to move that down to a high residential user.
Can I speak on that?
You see if I got any other questions.
I just have one, also, your application with the state says it's pending, action. Is that because you're waiting on approval from us?
Yeah, water right is what it's waiting for. But can I speak on the water rate situation here? From where I'm at, my ask was around 15,000. I see this rate structure to be very excessive and restrictive. Going off residential housing rates for what we do or usage is quite low. What I'm asking for is basically a residential house and a half usage for a industrial use that's going to provide employment. At my first meeting, I kind of explained that 15,000 was kind of our median usage. We'll have higher. This is reading, granted, something happens, we have a leak, we'll be shut off. Second exceedance, complete discontinue, it feels very restrictive. And my question is this the water rate that you're gonna propose for any new business, or is this just cannabis?
Support of Mr. Deshay.
As it stands right now, these are the first ones of permits like that we've written. Our plan is to move forward with these on further industrial and also into commercial as they come in, strictly because we are in such a crisis with our water.
I understand the water crisis, but if I was to use between 15 and 20,000, high end, I could pay up to $45,000 a year for water, and that is extremely excessive. Other parts of New Mexico at this rate is first 12,000 gallons is average of $4.09, and 1,000 gallons after that is $6.59. So I just question, how are we coming up with these rates? I'm just looking for an equal opportunity to run a successful business. And, this feels extremely restrictive and aimed per usage of what I'm doing. So that's my question is, for any industrial use, the rate I'm getting, is this the rate you'll give? I mean, an average restaurant will use between 3,000 and 7,000 gallons a day. I'm asking for 550 gallons a day. At this rate, your water bill for a normal restaurant would be, except $400,000 a year, would be completely prohibitory to do business in Portales. So that's basically my issue with this here. And I understand the water usage thing, but as a baseline to run a successful cannabis business, I can only emphasize that I do reuse. We're at the base of what you can basically do to successfully go. So I mean, is there any way we can bring this to my ask water usage, or deviate from this this structure?
Mr. Lewis, I would say that at this time that we have a recommendation from the Public Works Committee, and that's before the council now. And if the council wants to take an opportunity to amend that at this point, that's fine. Otherwise, that's what is being recommended to us at this time.
I have no problems looking at it. We got to start somewhere because we have no clue. But I have no problems with amending it if it comes back and, like Mr. Lewis said, it's way on a base.
Mm-hmm.
If we start with 9,000 and you ever get to a point where you can show that you are doing the best you can and we're not in water restrictions, I think we can amend it then, couldn't we?
Yes, these contracts can always be reviewed, and they're reviewed.
And I think
on an annual
since we're
basis.
all just kind of putting our toes in the water on this, no pun intended,
Mhm.
Or maybe it was, I don't know. Either way.
And
But,
that's what we had said. We said
Okay.
we could amend it, at any time because we can look at it, but we have to start somewhere. We don't want to stop business in Portales, but we don't want to use up all of our resource with water as well.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one question? How
Sure.
did my question, Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem and John and Veronica. Apologize, I wasn't at the meeting. But how did we come up, did we arbitrarily come up with 9,000? And I just looked at Mr. Dodge, base allocation is 4,000.
He's
So, may I have the floor?
yeah.
So how do we come up with the 9,000 figure? Did we just reach up and grab it, or is based on some kind of facts and figures?
We based it off of a high residential use.
Okay, but this is the business, industrial. So how could it be based off of residential?
That's just what we recommended because it was coming to a point to where it wasn't going to get approved and we were going to stop business and we didn't want to do that either. So that's just the figure that we came up with that we could agree
But it
to.
could have been 8,000.
Yeah.
Could have been 6,000.
Yeah, and we could, that's just the one that we all agreed to in Public Works between the committee members that were there.
Okay,
Can I speak on your question?
yeah.
So I think Mr. Lewis is gonna be growing more plants. He's gonna be using more water than Mr. Dodge. That's why the water is higher.
I'm just curious how we get 9,000.
Yeah.
And
I
it,
just wanna
and
say
it's
that's-
based off of because his is a micro business and this is an actual,
Okay.
I can't remember the title.
There was actually no amendment made to Mr. Dodges. He requested 4,000, and that's what the committee approved.
I requested around average 15,000 around.
Okay. So we have a recommendation. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'm gonna make an attempt to say that we approve this with the possibility of a possible amendment at a later date.
I will second that.
Okay, so the motion would be to accept the Public Works recommendation with the fact that we will come back and revisit it and possibly amend it in the future. Is that
Yes.
a good way of that stating that? Okay. Right?
Yep.
Okay. Any further questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item I, believe you're probably going to stay right there, John. Is approval of Amendment 4 to contract with Molson Corbin and Associates for professional services for Kilgore Improvements Phase 4, materials testing pending funding agency concurrence.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Council. This is another amendment to the Molson Corbin contract for materials testing for the Kilgore project. We waited till now to bring it to you till we knew exactly when the project would be coming. The 12,184 is within budgeted funds.
Questions for Mr. Deshay? So what's the pleasure of the council?
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lopez, second by Ms. Cordova. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next item is requesting approval of the city manager, finance director, and fire and EMS chief to electronically sign the fiscal year 23 fire protection grant.
Again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, thank y'all for letting me speak on behalf of Chief Kathy. In 2021, we were awarded $100,000 by the fire protection grant. This allowed us to purchase 16 Scott air packs. It upgraded all of our air packs that we had or were able to, to be compliant with the latest NFPA standards, which was, I believe, in 2019. This year, we are going for $162,581.60. This will complete all of our apparatus at the fire department to be carrying these AirPack X3 Pros. So every apparatus we have at the fire department will have one of these new AirPacks on it. Due to it being a fire protection grant, there is no fiscal impact. It doesn't require any percentage from the city to pitch in. The money will be solely for us from the fire protection grant. This time we're just requesting approval from the city manager, finance director, for an electronic signature.
Okay, any questions for the chief? It's a pleasure of the council.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Heflin, second by Mr. Bone. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Well, it's that,
Yeah.
that digital, it's that digital delay. Item L, requesting approval of the intergovernmental agreement. No, I'm sorry, item K. Requesting approval of the recreational facilities non-exclusive use agreement between the city of Portales and the Portales Softball Association. Miss Austin.
This is pretty much the same agreement as last year with the exception of our dates changed from August to October 15th. So that way we can account for the winter time and we can winterize the concession stands and everything out in the softball field. I stand for any questions.
That reminded me of something.
Okay.
Last year, we closed it up a little too soon
Right.
and they were trying, I think they were trying to hold a tournament or something out there and we weren't able to because
They had already closed
closed
it.
down.
Right. So this gives them enough notice that this is the date we'll be able to shut it down so they have time to plan accordingly.
Did we extend that time?
We actually went back 15 days because if we wait too long past October 15th, we risk freezing and having pipes burst again.
Further questions? It's a pleasure of the council.
To approve.
Motion by Ms. Cordova, second by Mr. Robinson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those in opposition, same sign. Motion carries. Now it's item L, requesting approval of the intergovernmental agreement with the town of Elida. Miss Austin.
I bring back to you the intergovernmental agreement between the city of Portales and the town of Elida. I did get your questions answered. The city of Portales will hold the liability as AJ from the league stated, you can't separate insurances, so our officers will be protected. I also added a portion in there that talks about being able to use their police unit while we're servicing their town. And I also added in there that it would be a 12-hour minimum service for each week at the request that you guys gave me at the last council meeting. I do stand for any other questions you may have, and the mayor is here as well if you have any questions for him.
Questions from the council?
Yeah, I do. So I've been informed that the state police chief has been contacted. Curry County Sheriff's Office has been contacted. Other sheriff's offices in the state of New Mexico have been contacted. And they all say that if they are not either commissioned by the sheriff of this county, commissioned by the state police chief, or employed by Elida, they have no authority to pull anybody over, and enforce any laws out there. So the officers could be charged with impersonating a police officer if they go out there.
I spoke with the New Mexico Self-Insured Fund, AJ, today, and he told me that being able to have Elida commission our officers is the same as the sheriff's being able to commission. There is no difference, and that there is no chance our officers could be arrested for doing so.
Sorry, who was that again?
AJ with the Mexico Municipal League, he holds our insurance.
Did we speak with the district attorney's office?
Chief Williams did, and I think he can speak on behalf of that, yes.
Yes.
And who did?
We had no concerns other than liability, which were answered by Mr. Forte.
I'm hearing other words that Mr. Stover said that it would be no, that they could not enforce laws out there unless they're commissioned by the three I stated.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Stover, when I spoke with him yesterday, said he would be here today. I do not see him. However, I spoke with him, Mr. Ray and Ms. Gaddis all at the same time yesterday afternoon. He stated that he had never made any comments that we would be arrested if we were to do such thing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody made the comments. I'm saying charges could be brought up.
Right, but he said no, because the municipality of Elida has the same authority as the city of Portales to issue that.
Well, they're not
authority.
employed by Elida, they're still employed by us.
But they have the ability to enter into the governmental agreement for services.
Yes.
Just wanted the rest of the council to know that that's what I've been informed.
Yeah. Also, Mr. Forte and, I'm on that self-insurance board. We're pretty cautious on what we're going to do and allow. But through the agreement with DFA and so and such, there's several other communities that do the same sort of arrangements with other communities, and to this point, there hasn't been any issues.
Speaking of
I couldn't tell you offhand. I've heard, but I don't want to misquote.
Village of Hope in Artesia is one.
That's one. Yeah, that's one I'd heard. So,
To
okay.
speak on that, does the Village of Hope not have a police chief?
No. They contract with Artesia for law enforcement.
So I hear you saying that, but I hear other things that there is a police chief out. I can't think of his name right now, and he has reserve deputies working for him that are hired by him.
I was informed that the Village of Hope, I haven't seen it. I reached out to Chief Roberts, and for whatever reason, my emails keep winding up in his spam along with other people's, so.
And AJ didn't have anything this morning because I talked to him this morning, but I'm sure that we can get some agreements for you. But we have a very, very short window to get this back to DFA or a lighter risk losing their funding.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I recall the mayor made a comment when he made his presentation that the city of Elida will have the authority to commission our officer. And I think we just approved that in our minutes. So I just think that was in the last minutes. And so I don't see the issue because the mayor assured us that he could, and our attorney said it was okay.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? What is the pleasure of the council with this other intergovernmental agreement with the town of Elida?
So moved that we do. Second.
A motion by Mr. Robinson, a second by Mr. Heflin. I'd like a roll call on this.
Yes, sir. Mr. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
No.
Ms. Cordova,
No.
Mr. Lopez,
No.
Ms. Parker,
No.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
and Mr. Heflin.
Yes.
Okay, I think we have a 3 in favor, 4 against, so that motion fails. Next item is appointment to the Infrastructure Capital Improvement Program, ICIP Project Evaluation Committee. Ms. Austin.
As you know, we're getting ready to do our ICIP committee again, and we are requesting to have, well, Susan's working on updating it, and we're requesting the city council put back to the committee so we can go forward with it.
Okay, who has served on that committee in the past? Do we recall?
I know I have and Jim has.
I have.
And Chad.
Okay,
Jim was saying that he did in his letter.
okay,
I have one time.
okay. Are you interested in serving again, Veronica, Mr. Heflin?
How many do we need?
4.
Jim said he wants to.
Jim
Jim
wants
still
to.
wants to, yes.
And Daniel? Do you
Yeah.
want to do that again?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Veronica, Daniel, Mr. Lucero, and Mr. Heflin.
His alternate.
We need 4.
All right. Next item is requesting approval of a joint powers agreement with the NMU Police Department. Chief Williams.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Council, we're just requesting your approval to enter into the JPA that we provided you.
Okay. No big changes over what we've done in the past.
No, sir.
All right.
Just a little more formal.
Okay. Chief Malden, Madam Chancellor, y'all have any comments you'd like to make? Okay. Anyone have any questions?
You say you take it, because before they were able to go out into the city hotels, correct?
Yes, sir. They were just given a commission by the chief of police. And this time we're just asking for your approval to enter into it.
Go
I
ahead.
think that shows great cooperation with Eastern, so I appreciate that, JP. Thank you.
Any other questions? Pleasure to council.
Move to approve.
Tell you what, Mr. Bowen, we're going to give that second to Ms. Parker today. The motion was made by Ms. Cordova, second by Ms. Parker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item O, requesting change of council meeting dates for the month of August.
I'm asking for your consideration since we were gonna have to turn around and do a meeting next Tuesday. One of the reasons we're having to do this is because we set this meeting for this date. And so I'm asking that you move the August 2nd meeting to August 9th, which will be the following Tuesday. And then move the second meeting in August to August 24th, which is a Wednesday. But it needs to be that way because that's how the calendar works for hearing the public, for doing the public hearings on the 2 liquor licenses that we have in place right now. We're gonna have to hold.
Okay.
The calendar just does not work unless we do it this way, or we could approve it with an extension, but it would be approved in September.
No. Okay. Any questions? We need to do this by motion.
I would like it.
Okay. Is there a motion to?
I make a motion, we approve.
All right. Motion by Mr. Lopez, a second by Mr. Bowen. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item P, public input for which no action will be taken. Any matter not known about or which could not have reasonably been foreseen prior to the time of the posting of the agenda. This agenda item is for informational purposes only. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, limited to 1 presentation per meeting, and no more than 6 speakers on each subject. Counselors will not respond to comments or answer questions to avoid any possible violation of the Open Meetings Act. Questions or requests for information should be directed to the city manager in writing during regular business hours. Do I have any public comment over here? Madam Chancellor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, members of the City Council. I'm Patrice Caldwell, Eastern New Mexico University Chancellor. I'd like to give you a brief update on the presidential search, which is ongoing. Applicants are being accepted and vetted by our search firm, and there will be community forums inviting comment about desired attributes of the next president at the end of August. That'll be August 27th, 29th, 30th, and 31st. And information will be sent to the council and published in the Chamber of Commerce newsletter, as well as through other media. I'd also like to brief you on our enrollment. We are seeing a 29% increase in freshmen. We also see an uptick in other elements of our student body, including housing. So we have 451 students currently registered to live in housing on campus. I think that's a very positive sign. Be happy to send more information to you as we have it. It is relatively early in the enrollment period, but we always track that very carefully. So we wanted to share that positive information with you and to invite your comments now and later about the attributes of the next president. Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council.
Madam Chancellor, thank you very much for that update. Anyone else over here with any public comment? Any comments from this? I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I barely saw that there. Eldon.
I was just giving everybody else an opportunity. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, my name is Eldon Merrick and I'm a realtor in Portales. And I just had a question on this. I know you can't answer it, but Lucky Keystone is applying for this cannabis production and has asked for the 15,000 gallon rate and was cut back to the 9,000. And I did some figuring on that chart that you've given him for overages. And I would like to know if this is going to be given to any new business that's coming into Portales. Because if it is, we might as well just shut the doors. I don't know of very many businesses that are going to be able to come in and afford a water rate like this. And if this is the case that we're in dire needs of cutting back on water, has anybody considered
upping the rate for existing businesses. I mean, if we're just gonna put this rate on new businesses, but we're gonna continue to let existing businesses use at the rate that they have without any consequences, what good are we doing? That's all I needed to say.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. I think you'll see something towards the answer to your second part of your question in the near future. So, anybody else with any public comment? Anything from the staff? Anything from the council over here?
I would just like to say that the Parks Department did a really good job with Heritage Days. They kept the trashes clean, they kept my roasters going. And we were really glad that we were able to come back into the memorial building. I know that that helped the elderly be able to come to the bathroom, and I think it was better attended because of that. So I commend y'all for getting us back into the building.
Yes.
And Susan did have something.
Anyone else over here? Mr. Heflin over here? Okay, thank you. Our next item is executive session closed meeting. I'm sorry,
Susan has something.
I couldn't see you back there, Susan.
I'm sorry, I'm very, very short. I just wanted to ask that if council or the public had any ideas for community projects, for picking up trash, working on illegal dumping. We are going to be working with New Mexico Clean and Beautiful through our department now. And I want to make sure that any community ideas come forward. So I would like people to share those ideas with the city manager or myself or their council representative. And I also wanted to ask if the public, the council, or any of the staff members have any additional infrastructure capital improvement project ideas, that they please get me that information as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Sorry about that. Last time, anyone else? Okay. Our next item is executive session closed meeting, action to convene in closed meeting to discuss matters as provided for under New Mexico statutes pertaining to open meetings referencing attorney-client privileges pertaining to threatened or pending litigation. I need a motion to do such as stated.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Joanne, will you call the roll? Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Corvo,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes, but just to let everybody know, I will not be joining in on the executive session just to compromise things. So as soon as this is over, then I'll be leaving the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane.
Mr. Heflin,
Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Robinson, and then Mr. Heflin.
going on?
I keep forgetting you.
I'm here.
Thank you, sir.
How do you vote? Okay, thank you.
I'll vote yes as well.
All right, thank you. You tell him that every day that we see him do that.
Did you turn that on?
Yes, you did.
I was gonna say, how's that damn machine know when to come on? I don't trust machines.
Dude, I've seen it all.
Okay, who's running the recorder?
It's on already. You're on.
Okay, we're on. I would like to state that only those items announced in the motion to go into executive session were discussed. No action was taken, no action is needed. Commissioner? I will tell you that we gratefully accept your offer of $175,000, and we are more than willing to work towards an independent, unified dispatch. I believe we're going to need the year, to be quite honest, but we can further that discussion. I don't believe it's quite as simple as you put it together based on my previous experience in these matters. But I think we can work towards that. Okay? Thank you. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.